Well, good morning, friends. Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life, speaking to you from our headquarters. Welcome to our morning broadcast. This week we have our pastoral team meeting. We bring in our team members from other cities, and you know many of them. And with us today here on the set is Bryan Kemper of our Youth Outreach Stand True. So, how are you this morning?
Wonderful, Father Frank. It's great to be here in Florida. It's nice and sunny.
Yes, it is.
Definitely different from the Midwest.
Oh, yes, all the cold that our country's been experiencing. Well, these are exciting days for the pro-life movement. Of course, we're here this week to strategize and make sure that we're hitting the nail on the head when it comes to helping people understand about abortion, understand what to do to stop it, and respond to all this craziness that's going on in regard to late-term abortion and infanticide. But as you and I know, I mean, Roe versus Wade unleashed a policy of abortion on demand. We've been saying it for decades, and yet sometimes it takes the other side to make take a step like was done in New York, where they're just blatantly open about it. They're no longer apologizing for it. We want abortion up until birth. And most people have never bought into that idea.
Well, actually, yeah, Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton, pretty much it's able, and there are states where they're doing these late-term abortions already.
That's right.
It's been done. It was, obviously in Kansas and New Mexico and different places, but now, they want to shout it from the rooftops that, up until the day you give birth, you can walk in and pay an amount of money and have your child ripped limb from limb.
You know what we've also always said in terms of pro-life strategy, and friends, I want you to understand this. We have always said that polarization on this issue is good. It's what we need. In other words, the public's opinion on abortion has been pretty deadlocked since 1973 in the sense that you've got those like us who will say abortion is never permissible. You've got a handful who say it should be legal at any time for any reason throughout pregnancy. But the vast majority of the American people are in the middle. Yes. They're conflicted. They would be okay with some abortion, but not with all abortion. Now, overall, they're closer to our position than to Planned Parenthood's position. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of people in the middle, and they're sort of cloudy and confused even about what abortion entails, how far it's legal, etc. We need to get people out of the middle, it seems to me, to resolve this debate. You can't stay deadlocked like we are now. We've got to get people out of the middle, and whether they go to one side or the other, get them out of the middle and become fully committed, because I'm convinced more will come over to our side than the other side. And I think events like this, what happened in New York, and then the governor of Virginia's comments, and there's work going on this in New Mexico, Vermont, Rhode Island, and who knows how many other states. This wakes people up who are in the middle, and it does polarize them, and I say that's good.
Well, absolutely, and we know that they intentionally did this on January 22nd.
Yes.
Intentionally did this. But I can tell you that with the people that I interact with, maybe in the non-pro-life category, which I have many friends like that, who have come up to me in the last couple of weeks and have gone, all right, Bryan, I want to talk about this.
Your pro-choice friends,
yes,
in other words.
This is getting ridiculous. And, they'll start talking about, well, I don't understand. I thought, it was mostly, and we'll start talking and realizing they're saying, people are just using it as birth control. And that offends them, doesn't it? It does. Yeah, it's just like, wait a minute. There's so many people that can't have a baby. And so I do think that it's waking people up. And it's getting people that want to be more. I've been getting so many messages from people that want to be more of a voice now, that want to do this. And I love that. I love that. But you and I have realized this from day one. It doesn't matter whether it's an abortion in the first trimester, the second trimester, the third trimester. It's killing an innocent human being. But now it's becoming more visible.
Well,
now
the thing
it's becoming more like, oh my gosh, what is going on here?
Right. Morally, it's all the same.
Yes.
Morally, the death of a baby right after fertilization, the deliberate killing of that baby, and the death and the deliberate killing of a baby a day right before birth, morally, it's all equivalent. Psychologically, it's not.
Exactly.
Psychologically, people are like, wait a minute, that baby, you could feel that baby kicking. That baby could survive outside the womb. And these are psychological differences that really wake people up?
My daughter, my daughter's pregnant. She is due May 14th.
Oh.
I'm going to get to hold my first grandchild, but I go see her at work. She works as a hostess in a restaurant in my town, and people come up to her all the time to touch her belly and to all of this stuff. And I'm like, what you're understanding is you're doing that because you're recognizing there's another human being in there. And right now, if she was in New York, she could just and it's just like it's mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling
that they see her stomach, they see the baby, they feel the kick, they know Kimberly. She seats them all the time at the restaurant. Now they know her as the lady having the baby, and they realize, wow, there's something different. And in my state, Ohio, where unfortunately our supposed Republican governor turned traitor and vetoed the heartbeat bill. Thank God we have Mike DeWine, who now is going to come in. He was promised to sign that heartbeat. We have some great politicians. You got to meet Jenna Powell.
I was going to ask you about Jenna. Yes.
But the fact is when I tell people, I said, yes, this bill outlaws abortion after you hear the heartbeat of the baby, and they're like, well, that makes sense.
Well, you know, one of the pro-life slogans that has always polled the highest in terms of its impact is "Abortion stops a beating heart."
Absolutely, it was our best new T-shirt this year at the march.
There you go. that sentence, first of all, it's medically true.
Yes.
And it's, again, psychologically impactful because, you know, as the argument has often been made, it's a short, simple, persuasive argument.
Statement.
Well, it's a factual statement. And then the argument that flows from that is, if the stopping of the heart or the absence of a heartbeat means death, what does the presence of a heartbeat mean?
Exactly.
Life.
Exactly. And I think it's one of those, it's not even saying like abortion is murder. It's just saying it stops a beating heart. And there's no argument against that. There literally is
in other words,
no argument.
Be for it or be against it, but you can't deny what it is.
You cannot deny it. Once you get to that and they recognize that fact, then you have to say either no, you don't do that, or it's okay to kill a human.
And in line with what you were saying about your daughter and, you know, that she is showing and so forth, you know, in New York, those that are defending the law and in these other states where the debate has arisen really make a silly argument. They say, well, if the baby can't survive outside the womb anyway, then the abortion is justified, the abortion is okay. And this, I really fail to understand the logic of this, because if a child is more dependent, if a child is less able to survive on her own, isn't that an argument for giving them protection rather than taking it away?
When my daughter gives birth in May, if she takes Mia, our granddaughter, we already have a name, and she puts Mia on a table and walks away and doesn't feed Mia, doesn't take care of Mia, and Mia dies, my daughter will be prosecuted because she failed to take care of. She is compelled to take care of. Any child just laid there on their own is going to die.
So the baby is you know, viability is a very relative term because the baby still is dependent.
Yes.
Baby's not independent.
And
Baby's dependent.
If on May 13th she hands someone $5,000 and says, kill this baby, cool. On May 14th, she just sets the baby there and walks away, she's going to jail. There's a disconnect, Father. There's a disconnect in the reality there. That baby is going to be dependent on someone for years. My 14-year-old's dependent. Like, leave my 14-year-old alone. I'm afraid of what's going to happen. You know? It's just, it's absolute lunacy is what it is.
It's lunacy. It really is. Well, we've got, let's see what Carmen has to say. We got some comments coming in. The people in the confused middle are currently silent. I've noticed that. This group is conflicted, fighting their own internal battle between good and evil, as their position is now showing its flaws. That's a very observant comment.
Well, that's true. And I can tell you from people in the middle that have come up to me in the last couple of weeks. And it's like everywhere I go, people I know are coming up and wanting to talk about it. And places normally you wouldn't. You go to the restaurant, you go to the bar, go wherever. You don't talk politics. People want to talk about it. People want to know, Bryan, what's really going on? So I agree, but they are, I think, starting to question, starting to wonder. I've even had a couple friends say, "Hey, can I get one of your pro-life T-shirts?" So,
You know, when we talk about abortion polling, polling on the attitudes of the American people, and we'll do a broadcast showing this in more detail. But it's important not to just go by polls that say, are you pro-life or pro-choice? Because, I mean, basically on that question, the public answers split down the middle, 50-50 approximately. But you have to dig down deeper to see what they really think about abortion, because, you know, people can say pro-choice, but only in favor of abortion in very limited circumstances. So there's a six-prong poll. There's a six-question poll that's been used regularly that gets more to the heart of the matter. And the six questions are, what best represents your position on abortion? And it goes from, it should never be permitted, that's position number one. It should be permitted only to save the life of the mother, that's position number two. It should only be permitted for the life or health of the mother, or rape or incest, that's position number three. Position number four is, it should be permitted in the first 3 months of pregnancy for any reason. Position number five, it should be permitted in the first 6 months of pregnancy for any reason. And then the final position, it should be permitted at any time for any reason. Now, if you break down, again, over multiple years, multiple polling companies that have asked these six questions, you find that a majority of the public have positions 1, 2, or 3.
absolutely.
In other words, abortion either not at all, or in the very limited circumstances of the mother's life, the mother's health, rape, and incest. That's it. I mean, that's a handful of percentage points of all the abortions.
And you'll have people who will answer, well, I would never do it. I'm pro-life, but I don't know if I want to take away. I think it's in the way you ask a question. And the other side knows this. They know that the media knows this. There's an old joke, Father Frank, about two priests, a young priest in formation. They separate monasteries. They meet once a month to have a cigar. And 1 month they go, and as they light up their cigars, the prayer bells ring. And they go, well, we need to ask our superior whether we can pray and smoke, you know. And so they go back, and the one priest asks his superior, he goes, is it all right if I smoke while I pray? And he goes, well, why don't you wait till afterwards? Say your prayers. And the other priest goes, well, you asked the question wrong. I said, is it all right if I pray while I smoke? And he says, well, you could pray anytime. It's all in the way you ask the question.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when you ask the right questions, you're going to find out that the majority of people do not like abortion.
They don't.
Do not agree with abortion.
That's right.
But the other side has won, in some cases, the rhetoric war. Pro-choice. Now, if you were going to talk about any issue, whether it's gun control, gay rights, whatever the issue, everyone is pro that issue. But when it comes to abortion, they don't want to say I'm pro-abortion.
That's right.
Because they know there's a stigma. They know there's something wrong.
Right.
So they want to whitewash it with pro-choice. It's the only issue where people are afraid to say what they're pro. Because they're afraid of being identified as saying, I'm pro killing babies.
They realize they cannot take the stigma out of abortion.
No.
But and that's what the other side is trying to do with all. People wonder, why are they doing all this late-term abortion stuff when they know the American people are not with them on this? I think they're doing it precisely because they know the American people are not with them, and they're trying to destigmatize it.
Oh yeah, they wanted the shirts. I had an abortion.
Yeah,
this lady who sat down with children bragging about her abortion. It outraged so many people because there is a stigma. There is a stigma, and we're going to continue to make sure that stigma is there.
Exactly.
Because it's wrong. It's murder, and we're going to win the battle. We're going to win this battle, and the stigma will never go away.
Now, we're broadcasting right now on multiple platforms, and some of our audience is brand new to our work, to our Priests for Life efforts. So I thought we might, in the last 10 minutes or so of our session here, let them know a little bit about your background, because you have a very powerful testimony. You have been on a very powerful journey. You have a very powerful conversion story. Introduce our newer audience to... and remind our audience that has been with us for a while about the journey that you have had.
Well, Father Frank, as you know, my journey was very rough in the beginning. My mother had tried to seek an abortion in California in the 60s and wasn't successful. And
so you're a survivor.
I'm
yourself.
A survivor, absolutely. My grandparents were so worried and so ashamed that my mother was sent to San Francisco to have me so nobody would know. nobody would find out. And so the first 9 months of my life, there was an attempted taking of my life, and then I was sent away because there was shame. And you know, I ended up, I had a lot of issues with spinal meningitis and you know, all the different stuff as an infant, passed around from parent to parent. My mom wasn't married, you know, and ended up a drug addict and on the streets, and a doctor in the hospital, you know, shared Christ with me in 1987, and that was what drew me out of that, and then my journey to where I'm here now. But getting involved, I remember it was going to see a Christian punk rock band, The Crucified, who sang a song called "The Silent Scream."
Oh, really?
Which is about the video that Dr. Bernard Nathanson did. This was in 1987. This punk rock band is seen, and it just sparked. And I got there because I listened to that song over and over. And then hearing about Operation Rescue, and my friend Ruth Ann, who used to drive me to church, would tell me about the rescues, and then I joined them. And, you know, I was this punk rock guy. I even looked more crazy than I do now. You remember my mohawk and all that. But I felt like, oh, where do I fit in the pro-life movement? So I started Rock for Life. I started getting these Christian bands, and we did pro-life rock concerts and such. And that's where I met you in Washington, D.C., as we were doing undercover work. I was undercover as a pro-abortion activist that year. But Father Frank, you know, it's come full circle. And as I shared at the prayer vigil that we have at Planned Parenthood before the March for Life in D.C. this year, you know, that I've been standing out in front of abortion mills for almost 30 years doing this and pleading with people as you have, and trying to offer that alternative, and talking with pastors or Christian parents who are going to the abortion mill because they're so worried about what people are going to say to them that they find out their daughter's pregnant or someone in their church is pregnant, and that they think that's the only answer, and they'd rather go do that.
Yeah.
And so when my daughter came to me and said, "Dad, I'm pregnant," she was scared because she knows what I do, and she's been involved in this. She looked up and she said, "Dad, are you mad at me?" And I said, "No, honey, I love you. I'm a grandpa now. You've just gave me amazing news." Father Frank, pregnancy is not a sin.
Right.
Pregnancy is not a disease. Pregnancy is always a blessing from the Lord. And so that's really given me this new passion for the divine mercy of Christ and the grace that he shows us. God gives us, you and I, grace every day. Mercy every day. And sometimes we don't know, I think, how to give that back to our fellow human beings. And so in the pro-life movement, that's one of the biggest things, is that grace and that mercy. And it's just really, it's been a blessing for me to understand and be in the footsteps of maybe a parent who's scared.
Yeah.
And I spoke at Cal Poly. Our friend Margaret had me in there last week when I was in California. And I spoke to the college students about that. I said, you know, when that freshman that maybe was raised in a Christian family goes off to college and maybe cuts loose a little and makes a mistake, make sure you have that grace and that mercy to welcome them when that child.
Like our executive director Janet Morana says, it's not a crisis pregnancy; it's an unexpected blessing.
Exactly.
Use that phrase. You know, would you also share there was the moment when you came face to face with abortion?
Yes. That
really impelled you into the pro-life movement.
You know, like so many people we know, I was saying, I'm going to go do some pro-life work and then move on. I've done my part, right? Yeah. I thought I could join this pro-life group for a year, do this work, move on, say I've done my part. And it was in 1993. We were in downtown Los Angeles, right near MacArthur Park, which is made famous in the Donna Summer song, "Someone Left the Cake Out in the Rain."
Oh, yeah.
And that day, there was somebody actually outside this abortion mill, which was geared towards illegal immigrants, passing out coupons for $40 off an abortion in Spanish.
Okay.
And we went in, and I would go undercover. This was long before Lila Rose and David Daleiden and the cameras. We didn't have those cameras. Back then, a video camera was like this hunk of
right.
Know. We would go undercover. The girl would go in the back. She would take a pregnancy test and then put pro-life literature under the things. And I would sit in the lobby and put pro-life literature in the magazines. And
yes.
We were in an abortion mill in downtown Los Angeles, and she was taking too long, and I thought maybe she got caught putting pro-life literature places. So I walked up to the counter as the door to the abortion room opened. And there on the table was a young girl, maybe 16 years old, her head turned to me, tears flowing out of her eyes as the abortionist was killing her baby.
You saw it.
I saw it. And it hit me. How could I ever say I've done my part while this is happening? I went home that night, Father Frank, and I just cried out to God. And I heard an audible voice say, Bryan, save my children. And that's when he gave me the vision for Rock for Life.
So since then, you've been doing pro-life work full time.
This is what I've done.
You know, this story illustrates to me a couple of important lessons that I want all our listeners to take from this. First of all, you were already pro-life and you were already active in the pro-life movement. In fact, you were already doing more for saving the babies than most people do. And yet, there's always a deeper level. A lot of people are doing pro-life work, and it's like you said, well, I'll do it for this year, or I'll do it for a bit of time, or I'll do it until I'm going to do something else. So you hadn't gotten to that point, like Janet and I say, where you hear the iron door close behind you, and there's no turning back, right? And so there's always a deeper level of commitment that we are calling pro-life people to. It's not enough to say you're pro-life. It's not even enough to be doing some kind of pro-life activity. We want to get people to that deeper level of commitment. And secondly, you got spurred on to that deeper level of commitment by coming in contact with what abortion is.
Yes.
And that is so much of a pattern. Those that are in this full-time, those that are just, even if it's not full-time, they're radically committed, no turning back, radically committed to ending abortion. We see this all the time. In some way, shape, or form, there was this physical connection. You saw that girl on the table. She was looking at you, right? Did your eyes actually meet?
Yeah, there was tears flowing out of her eyes.
You can still see that.
Yeah.
You saw the abortionist standing there. So there was a physical interaction, some kind of a direct face-to-face, if you will, with abortion. And that does it.
I compare this to, and I know some people get squeamish about comparisons, but you know, I grew up, and most of us grew up learning about what happened in Germany and Poland during World War II. We heard about the concentration camps. We heard about this. When I went to Poland, and I walked through Auschwitz, and I walked through Birkenau, it was life-changing, because all the stories I'd heard, read about in school, we're now confronting face to face, standing on the train tracks, standing in the barracks, standing in front of the,
again, that physical connection. Yes,
and it hit me like how real this is.
Yes.
And I know that they marched so many people through those camps right after the war. To see and to smell.
To see it and to smell it. That's right.
It's like William Wilberforce making the politicians smell the slave ships, the stench coming off.
Exactly.
That's what happened to me.
There you go. Right.
And like you've said, it's a quote that I think is probably your most well-known quote, is America will not end abortion until it sees abortion.
Right.
And I'm telling you, Father Frank, I saw it.
You know, Cardinal OConnor, who, as we know, was among the church leadership the most stellar example of total commitment to this cause of the unborn, said that that's what moved him too, being there at Auschwitz and putting his hand into the place where the ovens were. Same thing to as what you just said. That's what really stirred him. And again, there's a difference between knowing and knowing on a deeper level. We know you already knew conceptually. That's why you were going there to visit these places, right? You knew conceptually what had happened there and that it was absolutely wrong. Cardinal OConnor knew that conceptually too. But there's something about the physical connection that takes us to a deeper level.
I was standing outside the final part of the tour. And I was looking at the building where half of the smokestack was gone, and way off in the distance you could see structures like a house.
Yeah.
And I started saying to myself, I said, what if that was my house?
Right.
What if I had lived there during this time? What if somebody had escaped and ran up to my house and said, will you save me? Will you hide me? And God spoke to me at that moment and said, Bryan, that is your house. That's all of our houses, because back home, in your backyards right now, there are buildings where innocent human beings are taken in every day. and they're leaving in dumpsters.
In dumpsters.
And medical waste containers. We do live outside of Auschwitz. We do live outside of Birkenau. We live right now in a place where human beings are being taken in, dehumanized, and thrown away or sold to medical research. We have not just the right to stand up, but we have the responsibility to stand up. We don't have, I don't believe I have a choice but to be a voice for these human beings that are being killed. I know about it. I've seen it. I've experienced it. And until I take my dying breath, this is what I will stand up against.
No turning back.
No.
Well, thanks, Bryan.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for joining us. Spread the word about these interviews, share them, and be back with us again each day as we broadcast to you. Thanks, friends. Tonight is the President's State of the Union address, so be sure to tune in for that at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Bryan and I will be doing some live tweeting, so you can follow me on Twitter at FRFrankPavone and
at Bryan Kemper, Bryan with a Y.
With a Y.
Kemper.
On Twitter.
And what's the website? They get all of our social media on one website.
Oh, yes. ProLifeSocialMedia.com.
Follow all of it.
May the Lord bless you, friends, and protect you this day in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father Frank Pavone here of Priests for Life. Talk to you soon.